on today's Story Beat.
I can't give a better piece of advice to a young actor than just make sure you do it and do it enough so that you can find out whether you really love it or not. Because if you love it, you're going to stick with it. And you also could do it enough to say, I like this is okay, but I don't love it. And I don't know that I really need to do this for my life. But so my advice is try to fall in love with it. Do it enough so that you're sure you really want to be in love with it and want to do it.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on Story Beat. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past several decades, then you're likely to be a fan of my guest today, Peter Jurasik, who began his long-running professional acting career in 1972, working off-Broadway in New York and touring in shows up and down the East Coast. In the mid-70s, Peter moved to Los Angeles, where he began working as a character actor while also writing and performing comedy in nightclubs such as the Improv and the Comedy Store. Ever since then, Peter has appeared in a wide range of feature films and TV movies, while also acting on stage in legitimate theaters such as the Mark Taper Forum. Peter's made hundreds of appearances on TV, playing a wide variety of characters in both comedies and dramas. Peter's been a regular cast member in 3 television series and a recurring character on another 7 series. However, audiences seem to remember him best for his regular performances on Hill Street Blues as Sid, their resident snitch, and later as alien ambassador Londo Mollari on Babylon 5. But he's also guest starred on such shows as One Tree Hill, NYPD Blue, Sliders, Third Rock from the Sun, LA Law, Matlock, Growing Pains, Columbo, Remington Steele, Bay City Blues, Barney Miller, and most recently in the PBS series Mercy Street, among many others. Peter's work on the big screen includes The Longest Ride with Alan Alda, Arthur Newman with Colin Firth, and 42 with Harrison Ford. Today, he lives with his family in Wilmington, North Carolina, continuing his acting career, but also teaching as a guest artist at the University of North Carolina. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm deeply honored and truly thrilled to welcome the great Peter Jurasik to StoryBeat today. Peter, thanks so much for joining me.
Steve, thank you so much. What an introduction, way over the top. It was great. That introduction reminds me of, it's not even a joke. It sort of describes an actor, the actor who goes out on his first date, and the person who goes out with him says, let's go out and have a little dinner, and they have a little dinner. And the actor is talking about himself the whole time and continues to talk about himself through the entire dinner. And then around the dessert course, he says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've been dominating the conversation with all it is me. Let's not talk about me anymore. Let's talk about my work. And there is something appropriate about that story about actors, and to me too. So it's nice that you lay that introduction on me.
Well,
nothing I enjoy more than hearing someone talk about me, except me talking about me.
It's not like you've done nothing. You clearly have done a few little bit parts here and there.
That's right.
And it's it's all wonderful stuff. So let's go back in time. Let's go back in your history. At what point in your life were you a little boy when you thought to yourself, acting, stage, being on camera? When did the bug bite you? When did you first start thinking about this?
Truly, the only time I started, I didn't start thinking about it until I was in high school. But I feel like it's important to note, I had a mother when I was young who was a school teacher.
You're the one
who had a mother?
Yes.
That's the old joke. I was close to my mother. I was born at an early age. I was close to my mother. Anyway, she was a school teacher and she loved literature. And so she read to all of us, my brother and my 2 sisters. But I think back to that and realize that was really where the seeds were planted, because acting is about interpreting words, and it's all about the writer, really, for me.
And storytelling.
and storytelling. She was the person who turned me on to that, and she gave it to me. And in high school, I was studying to be I was in a seminary studying to be a priest, so a Catholic priest. So I guess that's what I wanted to be when I grew up, was a priest. But I ran into a teacher there who was my mentor, and I'm a big believer in mentors, because he was the person who said to me, "You could do this for a living," and I had never thought that I could do this until I had somebody like him who said, "You know what? You're good enough that if the circumstances were right and you wanted to, you could do this."
This was in high school?
This was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher named Reverend Earl Bizinet was his name. Great guy. He would take us off the campus of the seminary occasionally, go into New York. We'd see opera, we'd see plays, and it was all because, in a sense, all because of him.
Well, it's interesting. You were thinking about going into the seminary, which you had already seen that they stand up in front of people and give some kind of an oratory or a performance or something like that.
Oh yes, there is something theatrical about that profession. Yeah,
and those folks,
part of it.
and the clergy, the ones who are really good, are actually pretty decent performers, is what it turns out to be.
You know what? I definitely, that's, I think back, and I was a little boy. I think back of it being in church and hearing great preaching. And I remember one particular preacher. I grew up in New York, and he used to start everything like a story. He'd say, "It was 1942." and boats were and the people were in a small town in Austria. I mean, he was the greatest storyteller. He didn't do fire and brimstone preaching. He did everything in the context of the story. Again, stuff like that, I feel, are the seeds that were planted in me to become an actor.
You saw somebody in front of a crowd of people, and it didn't faze you. In fact, it drew you to it.
Absolutely. And as I said, my mom, she'd read The Highwaymen and The Raven and, epic poems, poems that tell stories, The Face on the Barroom Floor, all that stuff. And I learned to love that. And she acted it out basically for us as kids.
Well, that's
so,
that's wonderful that she gave you that impetus, that inspiration to go into that kind of a business. Not every parent will do that. So it's really great when you have something like that.
I think she was reading to us. I thought I wanted to be either a baseball player or a priest or something. That's what I was pursuing. But this teacher said to me, if you were interested in being an actor, you could do it.
So you're in high school at this point. Did you then go off and get training somewhere? Did you go to school for it?
No, I did plays in high school, and when I left high school, I spent a summer in a summer theater at University of New Hampshire, and one of my real acting teachers and my true mentor was the guy who asked me to come to that. He saw me as a student in the seminary in a play contest. He invited me to come to UNH. I did. We did a play contest, and then when I left the seminary, I spent 1 year at the University of Scranton in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
And they had set me up as a pre-law, but all I did was do plays and watch baseball. And so then the next year I transferred to the University of New Hampshire, and this fellow John Edwards, who was my real first acting teacher and my real mentor, started my teaching then.
And it wasn't long after school before you went out to LA, yes?
You know what? When I graduated in 72, and I didn't go out to LA until 76. What I did after was I went into Boston and got lucky enough and got into a production of Godspell.
Oh, wow.
Something that Marley Sims, who was one of your guests,
absolutely
also did, and met a lot of. So I was lucky enough to get a job right off the bat. That brought me into New York, and then I did some Broadway and off-Broadway work for a couple of years there.
And at what point in all this did you think to yourself, you know what, I am actually pretty decent at this, and I think I could make a living doing this? Did that occur to you at some juncture? You know what? It's funny. I pulled out a box of memorabilia here to inspire me or to recall things for this talk. And right on top was my first
contract that I signed. That was in 1972.
Wow.
And it was $360 or something like that. And I think back on that and think, wow, that was so much money to me when I was 22.
Yeah.
And that I was actually getting paid to act was, just, I mean, it was beyond my dreams. And I was, quote, one of the lucky ones that I just, worked and, made some money at it. And it was great. Did you feel like it was a vocation versus a calling? Did you just know you were decent at it or good at it or great at it? How did you come to that conclusion? It's funny. I think I do need to say this as a caveat and so people understand there is no one way to become an actor, and there is no way to get there. So my way is just the way it happened for me. But I had theatrical background, and I went to school at the University of New Hampshire. As I said, we studied acting, and I learned things like oral interp and did a lot of plays. So I thought I was going to be a stage actor. I did that for a while. I went to New York. I got cast in Godspell and a couple of other things. And I said, I don't want to be this. I want to be a serious actor, because I had a big ego, which I still do, thank God. And decided, I want to do something serious. So I went for a year up to Portland, Maine, and did repertory theater, where I did really kind of serious plays for a while.
Mm-hmm. So that became your proving ground.
That's right, and it's a great place for actors to begin their learning process in the theater, because the actor is in charge in the theater.
Well, let's get into process then, because I think that's a very good transition to it. So when you, aside from reading a script when you first get it, which is obviously the very first thing you do, what are your first steps? What is your approach to a script? You've read it. You've either gotten a gig or you're having to audition at some point. What is your first step?
Well, as I said, I've always been, and this is a lucky break for me, I've always been an actor that understands that it's about interpretation of the writer's work. So it's all about the writing for me. So what I do now, I'm 50 years an actor now. What I did when I was 1 year an actor or 2 years was a different process. I would get the script when I was young and say, where are my lines? When does my character talk? And blah, 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 blah. And then I talk. And that's why I said theater is such a great training for young for actors. It's a great place to start, because the process is about you. Eventually what happens in the theater, as you know, is the writer steps away and the director steps away, and you are left alone on stage with the audience. That's why it's a great place to train, because it really comes down to you and the audience. That's not true in TV. It's not true in film. It's a much more sophisticated process as time goes by. It's a great place to learn.
Do you think it's important that an actor have the sense and the understanding of what it is to perform in front of an audience, to get that feedback and to have them working with you, an audience, so that when you get in front of a camera, you understand where those beats and that timing is?
Steve, I think it's really, for me, it was essential. I can't imagine being an actor who doesn't know how to listen and kind of have a sense of where his words are going and how it's impacting. That's the great thing as a young actor when you're on stage. In a drama, you could hear them get quiet and quote, listen to you. In a comedy, you can hear them laugh or not laugh, right?
Right. Well, yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing. It teaches you about your work right there. And it's just you and them. Later on in life, you gain some confidence about, and you might be lucky enough to actually sit down with the writer, and the writer tells you a little bit about what they intend and want. You certainly have good directors who do that, but as a young actor, I can't imagine not having done comedy in clubs or theater on stage. Because
the opposite happens when you get on camera. There's no sound at all. Everybody goes quiet. So you don't have that feedback. You get the opposite of it. So
that's exactly true. Of course, and what's interesting about that process is that hopefully you have a good director, and he or she is watching you do the work, and can comment and say, yeah, that seems to be working, over that's not going in this direction, or let's talk about the overall scene a little more and figure out what do we want it to do, or let me show you where the jokes are. You get a good comedy writer and they'll say, yeah, this whole section is the setup. We can't miss that. And here's the payoff, or here's what the dramatic arc of the scene is. So, you have somebody who tells you, but you're working with a group of people.
So you've clearly developed a pretty significant number of characters, but the two that we mentioned in the opening bio, Sid the Snitch and Londo Mollari. So when you come to those, and you may not know what the producers or the director wants of those characters, what are you looking for in the words? What are you trying to find? It's got to be something that then becomes internal to you.
Both of those were different, so I can't talk about them together. But you know what? In terms of Hill Street Blues, first of all, here again, I run into a really great writer. Steve Bochco is the writer.
Yeah.
Steve Bochco is one of the greatest TV writers. He was winning awards for Columbo and stuff long before he did Hill Street. And the first thing he cast me in was a show with James Earl Jones called Paris. And all I did was play a really a straight school teacher. But what I learned from Steve and from working with him was he basically told me to don't. He said, I don't want you to dress any differently than you dress. I used to wear clogs all the time then. And he said, yeah, this guy would wear clogs, Peter. And he kind of dresses like you. And what Steve was kind of saying to me or suggesting to me is the character is you. So you be the character and everything is going to be okay. And he was teaching me not to, the way I had been taught in theater was to build the character I built the character from the outside in. So I would learn in college, I learned, how does he walk? How does he talk? What kind of shoes does he wear? What does he drink? What does he smoke? Steve wanted me to understand, we're going to be looking for something a little different from you. We need what's in your heart and what's inside you. And that'll be perfect for what I'm looking for.
You're not building from the inside out at all.
No, I'm not building from the inside out. It's interesting because one of my good buddies in Babylon 5, Andreas Katsoulis, who did Jakar, he was really from the inside out. And he and I had a great relationship, did a lot of work together, but it never conflicted that we had different approaches to the work.
Well, because at the end of the day, there's still an external factor to it one way or another.
That's right. And it's what I said to you also, there's lots of ways to do this and how it's done. So this is my way, my teachers taught me theatrical stuff first. And then
there's the famous story on Marathon Man of Olivier and Hoffman acting together. And Hoffman says, because Olivier was from the outside in and Hoffman was from the inside out. And Olivier, Hoffman says to him, why aren't you trying to figure this out from the inside out? And he says, no, dear boy, it's called acting.
No, that's a great story. And that in a lot of ways speaks exactly to what you're talking about. So when I got rolling up to Steve Bochco and I got a good writer in front of me, he wanted me to start pulling on the stuff inside me, not just the outside of the character. Mm-hmm. So he did that. It's also interesting when you talk about Sid the Snitch, though, because after I did Paris for him, he offered me a couple of roles in Hill Street, a couple of lawyer parts, I think they were, and maybe even a doctor. And I said to him, talk about big cojones in my life. And I actually said to him, I don't want to do that, Steve, but I'm waiting for something more interesting. I want to find a more interesting character.
Wow, those are cojones.
They were, but what's the Bob Dylan line? When you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. I wasn't, terribly, I wasn't making a big splash at all. I was a new young actor. And so I felt like I could talk to Steve. He's a guy like you, he immediately, you want to talk to him as soon as you see him and you start the conversation.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I said to him, good, when you come up with somebody really interesting, call me again. And
so, all right. So when you get scripts or when you get offered parts, or when you've gone up for parts. What for you makes a good role good?
It's the position you find the character in within the story. For
Meaning?
Meaning, let's talk about Babylon 5 for a minute. I read that script and I said to my wife, I'm not even positive why, but I really want to do this part. I really would like to get this part. Not, that you're jinxing yourself if you do that as an actor, because I had to still get it. But I said I really did. And what I liked about it is Joe Straczynski, who wrote the Babylon 5, had put the character in a wonderful corner in his life. He was stuck. He was at a low point. He was a drunk. He had failed at just about everything. He was a bit of a fool, and he had nowhere to go but down or out. And so everything was in front of him. Sid the Snitch that I did for Bochco was that same kind of character. He was down and out. He would do anything for $20.
I loved Sid. I
love Sid too, but I mean, he'd do anything for $20. That's all you could say, Yeah, he liked the people around him, but he was in a particularly interesting position in life. He was. Would you say you gravitate toward conflict-filled characters? Oh, of course, and I mean, that's the kind of. I think you'll find out with. You've met so many actors, Steve. You know that those are the parts that people really want: the conflict, the nuance, the struggle. The hardest stuff to play really is the straight line stuff. I look at Babylon 5 and I think, God bless Bruce Boxleitner was able to do, what do I always call it? Perfect human beings, good guys. That's really difficult stuff to do.
Well, he's good at it.
Oh, he's great at it. Are you kidding? And there are people who are really but it's like a straight in shot in pool. You want to see somebody get nervous, you just take the 8-ball and put it right in front of it and give them about 6 feet of green and say, go ahead, just knock that right in, just straight in. And then it feels pressure.
Yeah, the bank shots and the curved shots are easier.
Yeah, exactly. So I like the bank shots and the curved shots.
Same thing in golf. When you're putting a ball, it's easier to putt something that's on a curve than it is a straight in.
It's so true, and for me, that's the way. When I look for a part, that's what I was always looking for, the offbeat.
So do you find that when you get into a series and you're in a run and you're a regular character, do you find that both you and the writers deepen the character, or is it usually left to you to deepen the character?
Oh no, it's not left. I understand what my work is and what part I have in it, but doing a long run of something is completely different than I did. 50 guest stars where you'd stop in and for 1 week or 10 days, you worked with a cast and developed a character that fit into their overall story, the story that they had for their regular characters that week or that season. But when you're doing a regular character, God, there's a lot of input that goes on, and the really good writers lead you and let you know where they're taking you. David Milch, he is a great writer, and I was lucky enough to work with him. And he wrote Sid the Snitch. Basically, he loved that character, and I think in a sense created that character. And
if I know Milch, it's because he loved the track, and that character looked like he belonged at the track.
Definitely, that's true. I think it was the last time I saw David was at the track. Interesting enough.
There you go.
He loved the slippery part of who Sid was. He loved the underground, the behind the scenes kind of person. What is again the Dylan line? To live outside the law, you must be honest. I'm definitely outside the law, and I'm going to play it straight up for you.
And yet slippery as can be.
Slippery as can be. And as I said, do anything for $20. David used to come and hang out on the set, and he would listen and watch me interact. And at some point I realized he's watching Dennis Franz and I as we goof around and as we play around with each other and as we interact. And he watched the other actors, and that would change what he would write about. You would literally find stuff that you were talking about in your life in next week's script.
Wow.
Not so much with Joe Straczynski that way. Joe worked on his own, but that was true with Milch.
So was that at all freakish when you'd see it in a script, something you talked about the week before?
Not for me. I liked it. I realized I was in good hands. Steve, I really didn't lose track of the fact that the whole the center of this whole process comes from the writers. The writers create the characters and bring it up, and then we are the interpreters. We're the directors, the actors, the lighting people, the costume people, the hair people. We are all taking your ideas, talking to the writer now, and interpreting those and bringing those on and putting what we feel about them on.
So without naming names, I'm going to assume over time you've worked with actors who think they're more important than the writing. And when that happens, if you've had that happen to you, how do you as an actor work around that, where the actor's on set trying to change things to suit them versus trying to work the material?
Well, it depends again what position I'm in. If I'm working with somebody who's a star of a show,
mm-hmm.
or just a bigger fish in the pond, I'm working with Burt Lancaster. I'm not going to tell Burt Lancaster what to do, right?
No,
I'm not going to tell Jane Alexander what I think about the work she's doing.
Right.
If I'm one of the leads in the show, if someone came on Babylon or came on Hill Street, then I might feel more like I could say something about the character. But the truth of it's really about building rapport. And it's not for me to tell somebody, no, you're off the track, or no, this is not the place. That's what a good director does. If a director doesn't do that, they're really not great.
I think it was more trying to see how you handled it for you, not how you tried to correct them, but how you would adjust yourself in order to, or do you just think about you're just doing your job and you do your job, not worry what they're doing?
No, Steve, actually, I spend a lot of time whenever I meet people on developing chemistry, and I feel like that's part of it. If we're gonna do a scene together, and I'm in a scene with an actor, even if I don't like the person, even if I don't think they're on the right track, I feel like it's really important to have a rapport. And so I would work, and I used to work really hard to develop a rapport with actors. Some people say, "Oh, you had great chemistry with Andreas," or "You had great chemistry with Dennis Franz." That wasn't by mistake. We worked at it, and we made ourselves connect and fired each other. In a good sense, in terms of striking a flint.
Well, in the little bit of time that I've chatted with you, you clearly have a sterling personality that just shines through. So it's not, you're not a stiff sitting in the corner, locked into your own world. You're actually, you're out there. You're full of energy.
Phil Proctor used to use the word about actors, and you interviewed Phil, and you said you're a friend. He used to call
Phil.
Zips.
Okay.
And I'm definitely zippy. There's no question. But a lot of good actors are zippy, but I'm zippy. He used to say they're zips.
Again, I'm going to imagine that you've worked with every kind of human, the people that are very internal and they don't talk to you at all, and they're trying to figure their role out, and they won't connect with you at all. And you've worked with people who are, like you say, zippy, and everything in between. And
Absolutely.
So part of your job, I assume, as an actor, is to do your character to the best of your ability, and to do the lines to the best of your ability, and to do your job. It's not to correct anybody on a set.
Oh no, absolutely not. Right? You could get yourself fired or punched by telling people what to do, and that includes directors. I never felt like I was in a position, even with the most inexperienced and youngest greenest actor that showed up on the set to tell them what to do.
Are you the type of an actor that breaks down your script into beats, or do you just go for it?
I didn't break it down into beats, but it really felt important to me to understand the beats of the overall scene and understand what my character's role in the scene was to make it work. That's the kind of thing I like to talk to a director about. What is this scene about in your mind? Why are we doing this scene? And how do I influence this scene? Am I the person that's pushing the scene along or slowing it down? Or am I the protagonist in this, or am I the antagonist in this scene? Who am I in this,
You said something really important there that a lot of writers don't understand, that in every scene there is a protagonist and antagonist, and it is not always the overall protagonist and antagonist, or the antagonist in the movie can be the protagonist in a scene.
Of course.
But a lot of writers don't understand that. They continue
that's why you're blessed with good writers. I mean that. I have done a lot of work, as you said. 50 years as an actor is a long time. I have been blessed with a lot of good writers, but I've seen a lot of bad scripts too.
I'm sure you have.
I really have. I've had to do stuff where I got it and I thought, ay, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? And most of the time I'm pretty bad in it. You can go back and look at those and say, yeah, that didn't turn out very well, and it didn't turn out well for a lot of reasons. But the number one was the script wasn't good, and people couldn't figure out it didn't, kind of make sense.
But let's be clear about that. You have been for a long time a working actor, and it's a job, and you take certain things because there's money involved. It's not just for giggles and grins.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the business aspect, but you have an agent and stuff, and you take things because the agency tells you to take it too. I mean, if once in a while the agents would say, you're going to read for something, and I would say, I don't want to read for it. I don't like it. And they'd say, we want you to read for it, quote, take one for the team. I think of it. There was a movie called Howard the Duck.
Yes, the infamous Howard the Duck. Yes.
Right. Someone sent me the script for Howard the Duck, and I said, I don't want to be in Howard the Duck. I really don't want to be in this movie. And I told my agent that, and my agent said, yes, you do want to be in Howard the Duck, and you're going in to read for it.
Well, it was George Lucas. You had to read for it.
That's what he said. That's exactly what he said. You're going to meet George Lucas, so you have to go and read for it. I was, delighted that I didn't get in the movie. Though. I also, I think back to a show. There was a show called China Beach.
Yes, sure.
It was a Vietnam show.
John Wells.
That's right. And
Mimi Leader.
There was a lot of good people in it, and it was a good show. I forget how long it went, but they called for me to come in and read on that show, and I said, okay, I'll read. Send me. I read the part they wanted me to do. It was just a guest, I think, or maybe a recurring. But I went in and I read. I did my best, and when they got back to my agent, I said to my agent, "So, you hear anything from China Beach? They say anything?" And he said, yeah, they said they liked you very much, but they said you read it, Peter, as though it were a comedy, and it's a drama. And they were kind of offended by that a little bit. So I don't think you're going to do it.
Well, that's a great question for you, because you have done so much of both. You've done both comedy and drama. You are one of those guys that can just swing in either direction. And so my question is, do you have a preference? If I said to you, Peter, you're only going to be able to do one or the other for the rest of your career life, would you pick?
Oh, that'd be horrible. Why would you say that to me? But no, I
just wondered if one's a favorite. That's all.
I couldn't say that. Again, I was so lucky that I've been able to. Certainly, I led off with a lot of comedy, and that's what I did. As I've already confessed to you. I have a big ego that thinks, oh, you're a great dramatic actor, and you can do it, Peter. So as a young man, I was too stupid to understand that you're getting paid to do musical comedy, for instance, in New York, and you're making some money and they're casting you in musical comedy stuff. Forget what are you doing? You're going to turn that role down. You don't want to be in that. I remember I said to a wonderful writer, Mike McManus, I don't want to be on. He was writing for Chips. I said, I don't want to be on Chips, and he laughed at me. He said, "What are you, crazy? What are you, nuts? You take whatever you can get." So I was working in comedy, and I started, but I really wanted to do drama too. It was important.
Do you find your preparation for one or the other is different, or are they all the same?
Oh, there's a lot that's the same, but they're very different processes, to about how you go about them.
Well, tell us how you get there. What are those differences?
Well, in terms of what a comedy is about, I mean, let's face it, the script is very different. There's an unreality that you need to buy into. In a drama, if the character climbs out on the roof to get a child that's sitting at the end of the roof. In a drama, we worry that the child is going to fall and that the actor is going to fall. In a comedy, if I climb out on the roof, we hope both of them fall, and they'll be okay. There's the consequences are not the same. And are not as seriously. There's more energy. Certainly, this is not always the case, but there's certainly more energy about comedic characters. Their response to things are faster,
louder, faster.
Louder may be true. Louder may be true. It doesn't have to be, but certainly it's faster. That's one thing. They don't think things through. So you prepare for a comedy by, again, as I said, better look for the setup, and then you got to look for the payoff. And my acting teacher, John Edwards, who I mentioned to you, used to say, if you're not getting the laugh, check to see if they can hear you and if they can see you. Those are the first things to check.
Wow.
Right?
Right.
Can they really see your face? Because that's going to help, because they want to, and can they hear you? If they don't hear the joke, you don't have any hope. In drama, that's not as important.
Your facial, of course, on camera, facial reactions are basically everything.
Absolutely.
And so your reaction in a comedy, your facial reaction is likely to be quite a bit different than if you're reacting in a drama.
Absolutely, of course, that's true, and it's important for the actor to have that in your head and understand what the nature of the script is and what the director would like to do, and the stuff that moves back and forth between comedy and back and forth over from comedic to serious is kind of an interesting.
Is that the most fun for you when they go back and forth?
Of course, again, nuance, changes, dynamics. Those are the things that are most exciting to me as an actor. I played a lot of straight guys. I played guys who were lawyers, and I played some scientists. And I don't really enjoy those. What I like are people. I like offbeat characters that go left and then go right and then go up and then like we do in life, that have ups and downs, and some things are you can't believe how dumb he is, and then how smart he is. That same character, So
physically, Sid to me was all about the hair, and physically, Londo was also all about the hair.
There was a lot of hair on both those characters.
So when you had to go and do Babylon 5 and how long were you in the makeup chair every day?
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And what was your process of getting through that every day? Did you read? Did you sleep? How did you go through it?
You can't sleep. You can't read. You can listen to ambient sound, but you can't have headsets in because they're working on your head. You need to relax and you need to enjoy the time. Hopefully you have a makeup artist that you really like. They're doing their work, and all you're really required to do is sit there and shut up. And that's probably what you should do. They don't want you to eat. They don't want you to, so we would come in at 5 o'clock in the morning so that we were ready at 7 when everybody else came in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you'd spend 2 hours with somebody. If you were lucky, again, somebody like Bill Mumy on Babylon would bring in music tapes. He's a musician. He would come in to do his makeup for 2 hours, and we would all sit together, and he has really wide and eclectic and great musical tapes. So we would sit quietly and listen to the music. And it was a great way. It was meditative and a great way to get yourself into a day's work. But
So, all right. So I'm curious, you clearly have to be a pretty good memorizer of lines. Do you have any tips or tricks for memorizing?
you might think, as I said, I have a big ego and I'm not afraid to, I brag about a lot of stuff, but this is something I was truly gifted with. I mean, I was lucky. I don't think I have a photographic memory, but I was really great at learning lines. And you can see, if you look at some of the long-term stuff I did, the stuff Milch wrote me and the stuff JMS wrote me in Babylon 5 were long speeches because I was good at that and I was good. And Milch used to write stuff while you were doing it. I did NYPD Blue and he was on the set and he would hand you new pages while you were doing the scene, basically.
Really?
Yeah, you'd finish take one and he'd say, that was pretty good. Let me write something else here. And how about we move this around? And so having a good memory was really an important part of the process. You better be good at it. And I was lucky, as I say to you. I was blessed with a really ability to read stuff and then really give it a go.
Were you able to read it? Are you able to read it and recite it back verbatim, or did you work with it?
I was pretty damn close to verbatim for when I was.
That's amazing.
I'm not that person anymore. I've really lost that ability, and I'm not fast anymore. And I don't think I can do that anymore.
Do you think that you got faster by doing more and more of it, or were you always that fast?
No, I think I was pretty fast, but yes, the more I did it, the more they fed me, the longer I think I got good at it. I got good at really just taking it in.
I've spoken to several people, including Melody Thomas Scott from 40 Years as Nikki Newman on Young and the Restless, and those folks, the soap opera people, they're doing an enormous number of words a week. It's just a humongous number of words. So they get really good at looking at a script and figuring out how to remember.
That's right. That's a gift they have, and certainly if it's not a gift they have, it's one they develop as they go along. You better get good at it if you're doing a soap opera, because you're getting new scripts all the time.
All right, so I'm for the listeners that are trying to figure out how to make a career out of this business that we're in, especially as an actor, you're going to go through a degree of auditioning before people offer you parts. And so, what is your philosophy toward auditioning? How should an actor approach auditioning?
I always when I taught a little bit. I'm not teaching at the university anymore, and I'm not teaching anymore. But when I taught, I did teach about auditioning, and all I can say is I used to approach it where I was the answer to their problem. That's the way I used to think about it. I would say they are a group of people who are sitting there with a script trying to figure out who in the world is going to understand what I meant by this for this character to be, or understand what this plot was about. And I tried to project when I went in, I'm confident that I understand what you're trying to do, and I have an idea of how to do that. So I guess it was, I don't know who said it, but there was some actor. It was the guy who did the movie about the baseball players coming out of the cornfield.
That's Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner. He said at some point in his career, he realized they weren't looking for talent. They were looking for confidence. And I thought that was pretty interesting to say, right?
Whoa, I think that's a really spectacular thing to say.
At some point, I realized they're not looking for talent; they're looking for confidence.
Wow.
And I can relate to what he meant by that. He's not disregarding talent, or he's not disregarding what somebody looks like. For instance, the character's got to look right. I'm not going to be able to play, the tall, handsome astronaut. But what he's saying is, they want people to come into the room and say, I'm going to solve your problem. I can do this for you. I understand what you need done. That's
an incredibly great lesson for pretty much any career. If you come in and be the person who can solve the problem in the room, then you're likely to get the nod.
Steve, when I was teaching that, I would very often say that, and I said that my students would attest to the fact that I say to them, this is really good life skill to have too.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to do. And there's a lot about the work of acting that translates over chit chat and being able to talk and staying in the moment and paying attention to what the other person is giving you.
Mhm.
Those are all things that are really great to have in life. They work really good on dates. I wasn't married until I was 40, so all I did for a number of years was TV and dates.
Well, it might be very good until they find out that you're an actor, and then you might have a problem because they're thinking, "Oh, you're not going to make any money." So
I went out with actors, and so
you were okay.
And I also made a lot of money, so I was really lucky. I ran into a good business man. A business manager,
right?
And early on, I had one of my actor friends, Dennis Dugan. He did
lots of acting, and then he directed for a long time.
That's right. Did a lot of Sandler movies and stuff. He introduced me to my business manager, and that was one of the most important things in my career. What it did is that guy helped me understand there are going to be lean years and there are going to be good years, and it's important for you to manage your money right so that you're not stuck in a place where I hit a dead end here and now I can't go forward. It was really important and useful because he took my money and helped me save my money.
Well, it's the one thing that is completely absent in most arts programs is how do you manage a career from a financial perspective? How do you manage it from a career perspective? They teach you how to be the artist, but they don't teach you how to be the human in the middle of the arts. So,
right. Well, all I would say about that is you go to a doctor if you're not feeling well. You better go to someone who had some medical training at some good university to get it done. And if you want to manage your money, you probably shouldn't leave it to an actor who is studying.
Unless it's Wayne Rogers.
Unless it's Wayne Rogers. Why is that?
Wayne Rogers was a financial planner. He handled money for lots and lots of people.
Wow, there you go. Well, it's a great skill to pick up if you can do it. I was smart enough to realize I couldn't do it, so I found somebody good who could do it.
Sure.
And that's really another good lesson for actors coming up. Try to find out what you do well and do that, and get good people around you for the stuff that you can't do.
Well, yeah, I think that's very, very sound advice. I want to talk about directors for a moment. You've worked with many, many different directors, and notoriously TV directors tend not to actually direct the actors very much. They tend to give you your marks, and it's on you to figure out how you're doing what you're doing. But I've got to believe that you've had worked with some great directors who actually did help in some measurable way. And I'm just wondering, what would you say are the most important lessons, or maybe one lesson that you've taken away from working with your favorite directors? Anybody teach you anything that you've then used over and over again?
Again, I'll say to you, it's about listening, and you better be smart enough that if you have a person, a man or a woman in front of you. Some of my favorite directors were women directors too. That's just by chance, I guess, but if you have someone in front of you who wants to talk to you about the scene and trying to tell you, this is my idea, they're going to be the one who edits the final product. They are the one who the writers and the producers hired to shape this overall piece. And if they're being kind enough and generous with their time to talk to you, you best listen and try to hear what they have to say, because you're going to be able to glean from that what you're doing in the scene or what you're not doing, whether you're headed in the right direction, the wrong direction. It also, once again, it all varies a great deal if you're guesting something, if you're a small part in a big movie, if you're a lead, if you're one of the leads in a movie. How the director approaches you and what the director says to you can be different. Some of my favorite directing stuff is, I had I wish I could remember her name right now, but you'll have to forgive my memory as I get older. Names don't.
Take a number, get in line.
Yeah, that's right. Join the group, the 70 group, right?
Well, yeah.
The big long group over here, long line. She said to me, it was during Babylon 5, so she understood that I knew the character practically better than she did. But she gave me one of my favorite pieces of direction. She said, I don't know what you're doing, Peter, but do something else. And I love that. Isn't that great? What she was saying was she trusted me enough to that I had enough confidence that I wouldn't be hurt by the fact that she didn't like what I was doing. And she also trusted me enough to say, I don't know what to tell you to do, but come up with something else, please.
But the message was clear. Whatever you're doing isn't working really well.
Whatever
Find
you're
something else.
doing isn't working. Try something else. I trust you can come up with something else. That was a great piece of direction.
Did you ever get notes from a director and you had no idea what to do with it? And how do you handle that?
If they're bad or I don't agree with what they're saying, it probably is smart for you to make believe you understand, just do what you want to do. And I have definitely done that plenty in my career. If at some point a director shows me that they're not really in charge or not really paying attention, or they don't really care about the project for any of the different reasons that people, I have a hangover. I don't give a shit. I'm just doing it for the money. Whatever it is, if they're not into it, then I just, shake your head. Again, same as you do in life. You shake your head like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. And then you do just what you think you should do.
Well, one of the famous things that pretty much any writer that's ever worked over a period of time in Hollywood knows, you can get tons of notes from the studio, from the executives, from whoever. And there are tons of stories of these voluminous notes coming down from on high. And the producer going, we're not doing any of those notes. We're just going to give them back what we want. And invariably, the next day, the notes come back. That is so much better. And they didn't really change anything.
That is great. And that is true.
Oh, it's really true.
I heard everything you said. I didn't change anything, and you like it better.
But you're giving it back to them as if you've made the changes, and they're going, this is really so much better now, and you haven't done anything.
I'm so glad I thought of that and told them that.
So I want to know, I've asked a number of people this question. I find it fascinating. Sets are notoriously distracting places. There's a lot of activity going on. People are running around doing things. There's a lot of yelling and screaming. Some actors are verbose and some are very quiet. And there's a lot going on. Do you have any particular technique for you that you use to zone out the distractions? How do you stay focused?
You mean when I'm working?
Yeah, when you're working, when you're on a set and you're in a scene and there's a lot swirling around you, do you have a way to maintain your focus?
Steve, I can't imagine, but what's interesting about the question is that there's a lot going on the set when you're not working that you need to keep away from you.
Oh, well, tell us about that. Tell us about that.
Oh, well, that's I mean, when you're working, you and the other character, you're under the lights and somebody has, as they said, rung the bell, and ringing the bell means everybody shut up and stand still. So when you're working, everyone is paying attention and focused on your work and what you're doing with the other actor or what work they have to do. The dolly grip is figuring out where they're going to dolly. The key light person is moving the light. The focus puller is pulling focus, and you're concentrating on your work. So that's an easy time to concentrate. When you're off that, once they say, okay, let's take a break, the new setup, that's the time that it's interesting about who stays in character, who doesn't, who can stay together, how can you keep stuff back, what do you need to do? And it's a completely different process. I was a person who liked to get away from the character. So as soon as the scene stopped, I like to, be Peter again and goof around and talk. And I talked a lot. And,
you're a kibitzer.
I'm a kibitzer. I had one of my favorite people to work with. Let's see if I can remember his name. Jerry Orbach.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
So I did a Perry Mason with Jerry Orbach and spent 2 wonderful weeks with him in Denver. But he, I think it was it was a Perry Mason. But he was a great kibitzer, and he and I were so tuned in on the set. He loved to do tricks. He was always rolling a coin around. He would write down riddles, and after a take was over, he'd hand you a piece of paper and say, see if you can figure that out before the next take. See if you know what that. See if you can figure that one out. He would do card tricks and tell jokes, and for me, that was great, because what that did is take me away from the process for a little bit and gave me a chance to relax. And when they talk about baseball players, it's so counterintuitive. Relax your hands. Don't grip the bat tight. Let your hands be loose on the bat.
Well, isn't that the key to great acting, is to be relaxed?
Yep. So that you can, I don't know if it's great acting, but it's good acting is about, you certainly want to be relaxed enough so that you can hear what the other person says, so that you can respond in a real way to what's going on, so you can concentrate on what you wanted to do in the scene, so you can get the scene where the director or the writer wants it to be.
So I just wanted to make sure that those listeners that don't know, Jerry Orbach was well known for having been on the original Law and Order. And,
That's right.
And more importantly, he was, I can't remember, I think he was the original El Gallo, or I can't remember which character in the Fantastics.
You got it. That's him.
And he did lots of Broadway, and he was a very good singer. He had an incredibly beautiful voice.
May I tell you one little story about Jerry?
Please.
As I said, we had a great time in Denver. He, at the end of the day, the very first day, I'm sure, because he liked me, he said, I'll meet you down the bar after work or before we have dinner. I said, okay, that sounds great. So I went back to my room, shower, whatever, and I went down to the bar, and there is Jerry Orbach. He's in the bar. He was not a womanizer. He was, not chasing girls like some, or not chasing guys like some actors and actresses do on when they're on a set or on location. But he was playing the piano, and he started singing for people in the bar.
Oh, wow.
What a trip it was. People would be sitting there, and all at once, there is Jerry Orbach, and he's playing the piano and singing for you. And you're sipping on your little beer or your gin and tonic in Denver. You think, wow, this is cool. He was that kind of guy. He was very relaxed. He was not I don't mean to suggest in any way he was a big drinker or anything like that, but he wasn't. But he was, he liked to, sit in front of people, and there was no problem for him to start singing and be Jerry Orbach.
Isn't that wonderful?
Isn't that great?
I would give anything to have that experience, to go into a bar and there's Jerry Orbach singing, not just sitting there, but
it knocked people out. Some women would just go crazy, it was fun. It was a nice quality.
So, okay, a couple questions before we wind the show down a little bit.
Wow, I can't believe
we've been talking for an hour, if you can believe that.
Well, as I always said to you, let's not talk about me. Let's talk about my work.
There you go. So let's talk about teaching for a moment. What did you enjoy about teaching? Did you learn anything from teaching students that actually helped you in your own work?
I learned so much, Steve. I never thought I would be a good teacher, and it took me a long while to become a good teacher. I had to do it a long while before I got good at it. I underestimated the profession, I think, in terms of preparation. I underestimated the profession.
It's hard work.
It's hard work, right? And I was obviously teaching acting, not astrophysics. They asked me to teach acting. What a surprise, right?
No, I taught screenwriting for the last 10 years here in Pittsburgh, and it's hard work.
It is. What's interesting about it is I take a process that I do naturally, and I've been doing for 50 years how to do it. But for students, I need to deconstruct that process, work it kind of backwards, pull it all apart, and then be able to talk to them about it. That's a completely different thing than what I do.
Totally different skill set than doing what you do.
That's right. So, and the best thing I liked about teaching was that I eventually figured that out and deconstructed, and I got better at preparing, and I think I got to be a better teacher. But I love the people, and I love to see the process. I mean, I'm not saying this because I'm on your show, but I was excited about being on your show because it's about that. What you say in your lead is it's how people do what they do. So it was really interesting for me to watch. Here's a young actor or a young actress. Look how they are going about this. Here's how they approach this scene. Look at the amount of nerves they're dealing with, or look at the amount of trouble they have with this, or look at how easily they move through that part of the scene without, so it was, I love that about it. I love the students.
It didn't screw you up in your own work in some way where you were actually deconstructing it in a way where you didn't want to deconstruct things for yourself.
You know what? My ego is too big. I didn't, and also I'm confident about my process too. That's because people hire me and stuff. So I know how my process work. It was fun for me to see. I like when I see actors who are handling stuff that I couldn't do, or,
So I'm curious. You started off as a stage actor, as many actors do, started on the stage. You also then, I assume, got pretty far away from stage acting for most of your career. Most of your career was on camera.
I did some stage acting in LA.
But that wasn't the focus for your
Not at
career.
all.
And did you miss it? Do you prefer the stage to sets, or do you really like the
I
sets?
definitely don't. I always liked TV best. I liked it even better than film because it was so fast and spontaneous, and I liked that kind of work. Stage particularly, I've done some stage since I've come back here to Wilmington, but I don't find it that interesting. It's too much about just the actor experience. And what I loved about TV and film is that it's an ensemble experience. I love to know, as I said, what is the focus puller doing over there? What is the director, how is he thinking about cutting this? How can I give him a lot of different takes of this so that he has something interesting to do with it? I like the ensemble nature of the work.
You probably, I'm going to guess, like the fact that you memorize something, you do the scene, and you're done, and you're not repeating it night after night after night.
Good and bad. That has, that sword cuts both ways. That knife cuts both ways. You do stuff and you say, God, I so wish we could do that again. That was not very good, but that was Tuesday's work, and today is Wednesday, so we're going on. And I did like that, and I liked the work ahead of me. So yeah, that's true.
Did you find that you could really improve a performance over a long run? I'm not talking about a TV series. I'm talking about a stage play.
I don't know about that. At some point, I did really long runs of stuff. And at some point, your focus starts to change on
diminishing returns.
Yeah, diminishing returns. And I'm trying to stay focused in this. After, I did Godspell, I don't know, 9 months, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And at some point, you just having trouble just trying to stay on the ball. Well, there's something wonderful about doing it and letting it go.
Richard Burton famously during Camelot was thinking about laundry lists and grocery lists and anything but the show.
That's exactly what happens, Steve. You think, wow, I know what's coming up, and I don't particularly like that. So
well, this has been about as much fun as a person can have fully dressed, and I have just been having a fantastic time here talking to Peter.
I've enjoyed it too. You can tell that, I think.
Peter Jurasik, and so the last two questions for you today, Peter. You've clearly worked with a ton of people, and I'm wondering if you can share with us an experience or something that has happened to you that was either quirky, weird, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny.
No, nothing came up in those 50
years. 50 years.
No, nothing came up. I can't think of anything.
Sitting in a corner by yourself, minding your own business.
I could tell you about when I was on tour with the first show that I got, which was Godspell. It was a show about clowns and Jesus. And we had the same night off as in Pittsburgh as the circus did, the Barnum and Bailey people.
In Pittsburgh, here in Pittsburgh, where I am?
In Pittsburgh, that's right. I opened, my first professional gig was at the Nixon Theater, which I don't think is there anymore.
No, it's not there anymore.
Right. But that was my first gig, and we had Monday off, and so did Barnum and Bailey's Circus that was in town. And so a couple of people from Barnum and Bailey's Circus said, why don't you come over to the train and party with us? So I could tell you that story, but I won't tell you that story. That was pretty weird and pretty trippy. We had a lot of fun.
You've just set us up.
Circus,
Jesus and clowns at the circus.
Yeah, we were a really young group of just New York, good old New York actors, and they were a group of pretty veteran circus people. Yeah, we had fun parties that night, as you could imagine. I could tell you that, or I could tell you the story of Raymond Burr or Peter Falk, who both had Raymond Burr, when I worked with him, read everything off a cue card, but no one told me about that. So when I started to work with him and I started the first rehearsal, he began to talk and was looking past my shoulder at his cue card. And I didn't know what the hell was going on because no one had told me. So I would like sort of slide over to the right a little, and then he'd slide over. Right. Finally, somebody told me, no, Peter, he's not looking at you. He's making believe he's looking to you. He didn't do it the way Brando supposedly did it, which is read it and then look at you. He just made believe you were the cue card.
Have you seen the picture from the Godfather set of Duvall with the words on his chest?
I have. It's a great picture. It's very funny. And I hear he used to change it and make Duvall purposely, put the wrong words up. With Peter Falk, when I did Columbo, they told you only look into his real eye.
Mhm.
Don't look into, because he had a
Glass eye.
And of course, that caused you to look into his glass eye all the time because people told you that. So you'd be doing the scene with him, and then you think, wait, I'm talking to the wrong eye. And that became a very big, I could tell you that story.
I spent 6 months working with Peter Falk and John Cassavetes on 3 plays.
Oh my God. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're real heroes of mine. Wow.
It was the spectacular moment of my whole career.
Wow.
to work with
you
those.
Need to tell me about that, either on or off mic sometime.
And John Voight and Jenna Rollins, they were all involved.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was spectacular.
Boy, you're talking top notch. You can't get higher level acting.
It was as good as it gets.
I don't think they get better than Jenna Rollins. And Cassavetes was great, and Falk was great, and so you were really with the very best.
So you have one more story? Is that what you had?
You know what I was going to say? How I got my very first job was kind of interesting. I got to California, and I told you my first job in New York was Godspell, but when I got to California, I didn't know anybody, and I saw that Dustin Hoffman was doing a movie called Straight Time.
Yeah, sure. Ulu Grossbard.
You got it. And one of the great things about being on that set, I give away the end of the story now because I did get the part, but they had a big fight the day they worked, Dustin Hoffman and Ulu Grossbard, on the set of a bank robbery that I was in. But it was early on in California when you could still sneak on the lots. I don't think you can sneak on the lots anymore. And I snuck on Warner Brothers. I found the office where they were, and I told the casting person, my father, Dustin Hoffman worked with my father, which he did, typing for my dad when my father was doing ad work in New York. He was a temp worker. And I said, and he didn't tell me this. He said, I said, Dustin said I should look him up when I come out here. And they said, really? And I said, yeah, really. And they said, okay, well, good. Here's the script. You take a look at this part, and we'll call you tomorrow or something like that, and sent me on my way. And when I called them the next day, or when I went in the next day, they said, we talked to Dustin, and he doesn't know your father, and he doesn't know you. You completely made that up, didn't you? I said, I didn't completely made it up, but he didn't tell me to look them up. But they said, we were so impressed, though, we would like to read you anyway. They did read me. I didn't get the part they read me for, but they put me in another scene, and that was my first role. And I think that's a cool story, that I actually talked my way in, and that they let me read.
You BS'd your way into your first part.
You got it. I BS'd my way in.
That's amazing.
Isn't that good?
That's great.
I know. I still get residuals for it.
So for those actors out there right now trying to find their way to their first part, I don't know that you want to BS your way in, but it could work. You never know.
That's why I tell it now. I don't think it's as easy. It was 1976 or something. I don't think I wouldn't suggest trying to sneak on the lot.
No, it's very different times, quite obviously.
That's right. Yeah.
So, all right, last question for you today, Peter. You've already given us an incredible amount of great advice, but do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip that you can lend to those who are trying to break in, or maybe you're in and trying to get to the next level?
If you are an actor, my best piece of advice is act and do the work. If you're a young actor, you need to act every chance you get. You need to get in any play you can get in. You need to, read at the church if you go to church, or volunteer even if you don't read at the church. What you want to do is do the work. That's it. So I can't give a better piece of advice to a young actor than just make sure you do it, and do it enough so that you can find out whether you really love it or not. Because if you love it, you're going to stick with it. And you also could do it enough to say, I like this is okay, but I don't love it. And I don't know that I really need to do this for my life. So my advice is try to fall in love with it. Do it enough so that you're sure you really want to be in love with it and want to do it.
Well,
Again,
that
it's
is
good advice in life too, right?
well, it's very good advice in life, but and it's true especially in the arts. Not that it isn't true in business and medicine and everywhere else, but in the arts, it's particularly true that you can't go down to the corner store and buy yourself the ability to act. You have to act, just like you can't go and you can't purchase a script to sell. Well, unless you're a producer, but you as a writer, you can't go buy the script to sell. You have to write the script, and you have to write and write and write to get good at it. So
any good writing teacher tells you, write. Everything
Right.
else is an excuse. Get writing.
That's correct. And same with acting. And it's more challenging for a director who can't always, you can go find a way to act without actually being paid by anybody, but it's very hard to find a directing gig without
That's
that.
really true. That's why I say it. And the other thing is the second part of it, which is fall in love with Steve, because if you fall in love with it, it's going to protect you from the hardships of the business and whatever else you might run in along the way. If you really love it, great. You're going to stick with it.
Well, I think that's very sound advice. Peter Jurasik, this has been so much fun. I'm so grateful for your spending some time with me on StoryBeat today.
Steve, for me too. It's been just great to chat with you. Thanks.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.